Let's take a look at some radical expressions. Radical expressions are expressions that have a root symbol involved with them. A couple of things that are important to note about root symbols are that square roots or cubed roots or fourth roots, any kind of root, is the opposite or the kind of the undoing of powers, undoing of exponents. So that the square root of a number, which we usually just write without a number, what they call an indice inside, but you could write with a little 2 here if you wanted, is the opposite of taking a number and raising it to the power of 2. The cubed root of a number, so the root symbol with a 3 for an indice, is the opposite of raising a number to the power of 3, and so on. So as we're looking at our numbers over here that we're supposed to reduce, we're going to keep that in mind. We're also going to keep in mind that although you cannot take the square root of a negative number because anything times itself is positive, you can, for instance, take the cube root of a negative number. The cube root, for instance, of negative 8 is negative 2 because negative 2 cubed is negative 8. We can actually get a negative answer if we're doing it an odd number of times, because then we end up with the even number of them and then multiplying it one more time by a negative value to end up with a negative number. So let's take a look at our 4 examples, A, B, C, D here. Our first one is just a standard square root. Square root of 121 is 11, so that's just 11. The cube root of 125 is the number times itself again, that's 125. Now usually these are pretty easy to get to even if you just start at the beginning and go up, because it doesn't take long before the numbers get really big. Since this ends in 5, we know 5 must be a factor, so we'll try 5 first. 5 times 5 times 5, well 5 squared is 25, and 25 times 5 is 125. So the cubed root of 125 is 5. Now we need the fourth root of 625. Well, we already know that the cube root of 125 was 5. So what if we multiplied 5 out a fourth time? Well, we'd have 125 times 5, which is 625. So the fourth root of 625 must be 5. But we have a negative root. If we're taking a negative root an even number of times, it's not going to work, because negative 5 times itself and then times itself 2 more times is going to be an even number of multiples. It's going to be a positive number. So there is no answer, no real answer for this one. There aren't any real numbers that will be negative 625 when they're multiplied out 4 times. Our last one here is the fifth root. So this is an odd root of a negative number, so there will be an answer of 32. Now a fifth root, that's a lot of times sometimes we multiply by itself, so the number that's going to be the fifth root of this has got to be something very small. And we can see, since it's an even number, 2 must be a factor. So let's start with 2 and see if 2 would work. We'd have 2 times itself 5 times. Oops. And we're trying to see if that equals 32. We have 2 squared is 4. And 4 times 2 is 8. And 8 times 2 is 16. And 16 times 2 is 32. So yeah, so the fifth root of 32 would be 2, so the fifth root of negative 32 would be negative 2.